What's going on, guys? My name's Theoatrix, and today we have a new old school game update. We saw a range of small updates and changes to the game, as well as a big statement about how Jagex plans to solve the issues surrounding the Revenants and the Revenant Caves. Revenants have been a pretty major problem for the game for a few years now, being a location overrun with paid clan services that creates a breeding ground for gold farming and real-world trading. Before I go into depth about how Jagex plans to fix this, I'll quickly brush over today's small updates. Seaweed spores have been an item that can be quite slow to obtain for Ironmen, only obtainable from killing monsters on Fossil Island or picking them up from random spawns underwater. Well, now seaweed spores are thievable from master farmers, making giant seaweed a lot easier and less tedious to obtain. The coal bag can now be filled while you're inside the bank. This may not seem like a big change, but it saves a number of clicks and time when you're making bars at the blast furnace. Every agility course in old school now has a lap counter. From the release of this update, everyone's counter will start at 0, despite of course having completed the course many times in the past. There's a new agility shortcut in Gutanoth, which allows for easier access to the coordinate clue scroll. You can now climb a rock wall from outside the city, which requires 71 agility and completion of the Watchtower quest. So, let's talk about the Revenant Caves. The Revenant Caves were released back in November of 2017, with the intention of them to be an area to create a multi-combat PvP hotspot. They've been one of the most captivating updates that have ever come to the wilderness, creating an area where both PvM and PvP collide, offering a high-risk, high-reward scenario. Over the years though, the Revenants have become a huge hub for gold farming, facilitated by clan chats. There's a number of Revenant chats out there where players will lock down worlds and kill any player that enters the area. With this protection, the danger of the Revenant Caves is completely gone, and the drops flow into the game, bringing a huge amount of GP and skilling supplies in. While this whole defensive attitude isn't against the rules and isn't a large integrity problem, what goes on behind the scenes is the real issue. These clans facilitate gold farming, where a large percentage of the players use these clans to spend their entire day on multiple accounts farming large sums of gold and real-world trade it for real-life money. These clans give these players a safe environment to continuously farm gold. With today's game update, Jagex released a long statement proposing 7 solutions to fix these issues, and now I'm going to go through each solution and talk about how it would affect the caves and the game itself. The first solution is to take the Revenants out of the cave and make them roam the wilderness, which removes the gold farming aspect and also brings back the nostalgia of how the Revenants were back in RS2. Back in the day, Revenants came out on the 10th of December in 2007, and they were added to add some danger to the wilderness, because at the time, the wilderness was no longer a PvP area, which was a move by Jagex to stop real-world trading and scamming. The Revenants would appear out of nowhere, anywhere in the wilderness, and you would hear the frightening sound that every player from back then knows all too well. These Revenants had a teleblocking attack, where they would teleblock you for 5 minutes and then freeze you, and any unprepared player would almost always perish. Since PvP still exists in old school, having the Revenants roam the wilderness would be quite different to how it was back in the day when there was no PvP. I can imagine that Revenants could appear while some PKers are in a PvP fight, which would completely throw the fight out of balance. I suppose they could add a timer of immunity to people that are in a fight, and that would solve the issue, but it would create another issue where players could box each other to avoid the Revenants. Bossing and PvM in the wilderness will also need to be considered. If a player was killing one of the wilderness bosses, a Revenant could come along and make the fight a lot harder than it already is. Perhaps if the Revenants were to roam the wilderness, they could avoid these bossing areas. Overall, this solution would certainly solve the issue of gold farming, It would make the Revenants more of a one-off money-making opportunity, where if you happen to run into one while you're in the wilderness, you're treated with a nice reward for killing it. This would also do well in rejuvenating PvP across the entirety of the wilderness, but it would go against the original plan from Jagex to have a multi-combat PvP hotspot, which the current Rev Caves are. The second proposed solution is to remap the Revenant Caves. The fact that all of the Revenants are in one open, condensed area allows these clans and gold farmers to more freely lock it down and harvest money. Spreading out the Revenants across a large cave where you need to go through corridors to get through the next area would solve this condensed issue. Jagex also suggests that they could add more hiding spots and escape routes to help the solo players out there. I can only see that suggestion working if the hiding areas were single-way combat or were instances, because there's nothing stopping these clans from entering these hiding areas and still killing you. The next proposed solution was to make more changes to the Bracelet of Ethereum. Jagex suggests lowering the effect of the bracelet, removing the bracelet, or replacing the bracelet with a different item. Making these changes would make the overall GP per hour of the caves far lower, making banking far more common. But this isn't really going to solve the issue entirely, since clans and players can bring along alt accounts to bring them food. It will, though, dramatically lower the GP per hour, but it won't stop players from clanning up and facilitating gold farming. Jagex's fourth proposed solution is to change the drop table of the Revenants. Revenants drop a range of valuable skilling supplies consistently. Every few kills you're rewarded with valuable drops, and then every once in a while you land a rare, more valuable drop. So overall, the loot that you get is pretty consistent in terms of making money. Jagex suggests removing the consistency of the loot and making it more a rare drop kind of agenda. I don't really see how this will remove the gold farming though. Unless the rare drops were lower in value, then players would overall just stop farming the Revenants for money. The large amounts of skilling drops have had some pretty big effects on the costs of skilling as well. Before the caves were released, the price of adamant bars hovered around the 2.5k mark. Gradually since 2017, when they were released, they've been dropping and currently trade at around 1.8k. Having large amounts of skilling supplies enter the game decreases the price of skilling, and now making adamant plate bodies is only 0.4 GP per XP, whereas in 2017 it was more like 3 GP per XP. Another solution is that they could make the Revenant Caves a task-only area, where you can only enter the caves and kill the Revenants if you get it as a Slayer task. This would definitely remove the gold farming that happens here. However, it would also change and remove the multi-PvP hotspot aspect of the caves. I am in support of having a task-only area for players, but it would do nothing to solve the issue of gold farming. The most controversial solution that Jagex suggests is to completely remove the Revenants and the Revenant Caves. Jagex themselves say that they aren't a fan of this approach, but it would definitely solve all of the issues at hand. Removing the caves completely would add a range of other issues to the game though, such as where would these unique Revenant drops go? I'm assuming that the drops would be spread out to the wilderness bosses. Overall, I don't think it will ever come down to removing the caves entirely. Jagex seems very inclined to address the issues and solve them without removing the content. The final proposed solution by Jagex is to ban clans and teams from locking down the Revenant Caves. Removing the clanning and teaming aspect would remove the facilitation of gold farming, where going to the caves becomes more of an every man for themselves type of activity. That would overall lower the GP per hour you get from the caves, making it a less reliable and viable option for gold farmers. However, it would be very hard for Jagex to stop clans and teams from going to the caves. Even if they disabled clan chats, players would all wear one of the same item to distinguish who is in their clan. Perhaps Jagex is suggesting that they temporarily ban players that don't abide by the rules. However, I see this as a bit of a waste of resources for the anti-cheating team at Jagex, since they'll always be investigating the caves. So that's all of the solutions proposed by Jagex. What do you think? Which solution do you think works the best? Or do you have any other ideas? Leave them down down in the comments. I personally think having the Revenants roam around the wilderness is the best way to go about it. It would remove the gold farming aspect entirely and bring back a lot of nostalgia from the RS2 days. However, it would also remove the multi-PvP hotspot, which was the main purpose of the content. It's definitely a very hard decision for Jagex to make, but over the next few weeks, Jagex will keep us updated on how they're thinking and what they think they'll do. Anyways, that's everything I've got for you today. If you want to get yourself a gaming mousepad or a poster, be sure to check out my merch store that's linked down in the description. There's 2 mousepad designs in stock at the moment, the Wilderness Gaming mousepad and the Firecape mousepad. They're huge mousepads, more than big enough to fit a gaming keyboard and still have heaps of room for your mouse. They're made of neoprene, which is the soft cloth material that all gaming mousepads are made of, so you can be assured that there won't be any jumpy mouse movement and it will always be consistent. So if you want one, check out merch.theoatrix.net or click the link down in the description. Anyways, if you want to see more old school content, consider subscribing to my channel to keep up to date. And as always, thanks for watching and stay safe.